San Francisco Anchor Brewing unveils new branding redesign for 125th anniversary. Now tell me, what does this look like? Tell me if you can tell the difference. Who thought of this? What's up guys, this is Alan again, back with another video. And today we're going to talk about something that's in the news, especially within the beer community, craft beer specifically, and also in my hometown of San Francisco. We are going to talk about the closure of the Anchor Brewing Company, which is the first craft beer brewery in the US, founded in 1896. Actually, it was created somewhere around 49er days, but it wasn't really named. But it eventually became the Anchor Brewing Company. You've probably seen Anchor Steam before. There's actually a very, very important history behind it, and it was one of the first beers available in the market that was not the big adjunct lagers like Miller, Coors, or Budweiser. Up until a certain time, that's all you can get. When you got beer in America, you were just talking about Bud, Coors, or Miller. You didn't really have any other options. And maybe if you were in California, you might have heard of Anchor. But other than that, the choices were quite limited, which is why this beer is kind of important because it did spark the beer movement in the United States. So let's talk about what style of beer Anchor is. It is called Anchor Steam. Steam beer has been trademarked by the company, but after being trademarked, Steam beer is now called the California Common, which is basically a lager yeast beer that's fermented under ale conditions. The reason why this happened was because when during the frontier days, everybody was migrating from the US from the east to the west. So a lot of the East Coast people, they were generally drinking lagers. When they came to San Francisco, they didn't have time to set up equipment that allowed cooler fermentations. So what happens is you had lager yeast fermented in ale conditions, which is generally warmer conditions. So the difference between an ale and a lager is that ale yeasts are top fermenting, generally warmer temperature, and lager yeasts are bottom fermenting and generally done at cooler temperatures. So when they went to San Francisco, they didn't have time to set up, the workers needed beer. That's just the thing back in the day. They didn't have time to set up the cooling facilities to keep the beer to ferment cold. So what happened was this hybrid style of fermentation resulted in a lot of steam coming out of the breweries, which is why it's called steam beer. That's just a little brief history of what Anchor Brewery is as a company and Anchor Steam, the beer, is. So let's take a look at this, actually a few articles, because this just happened as of this is the 16th. The news broke out on the 12th, probably, so less than a week ago. Barring a beer miracle, San Francisco's legendary Anchor Brewing is closing after 127 years. It's not just a legendary San Francisco brewery like we talked about before. It is also the first craft brewery in the United States. Anchor Brewing, a true San Francisco institution of more than 127 years as of today, which is 2023, is shutting down operations, the company announced Wednesday, July 12th. The beer production already stopped, and Public Taps, which is the beer garden that's next to the brewery, closed temporarily Wednesday in light of the news. The history of the company is considered the first American craft brewery, includes another near-death acquisition in 1965, acquisition by Sapporo USA, and subsequent union drive, followed by lagging sales in recent years. So what happened in 1965 is Fritz Maytag, a business person, which is related to the the Maytag laundry machines. He basically pushed Anchor Steam to the United States market, not just in San Francisco Bay Area, and actually started a movement of craft beers in the US. And what happened is Sapporo bought it. And we'll talk about this later and why this is very, very important. And some people a lot of people actually consider that this acquisition is what killed the brewery. According to VinePair, the Japanese conglomerate subsidiary held an all-hands meeting at the historic Potrero Hill Brewery where they let workers know the company is ceasing all operations and liquidating. Sam Singer, a representative retained by the company, issued an early morning press release confirming the closure ahead of the 9 a.m. meeting. Singer told the San Francisco Chronicle the brewery was losing millions of dollars a year, but employees told VinePair that Sapporo's neglect of equipment maintenance and anti-union behavior were significant factors to those losses. I think Sapporo sunk anchor Nate Diaz, a former production worker who left in June 2023, told the outlet. So this guy just left a month ago. And this is why this acquisition is actually very, very important. And it's starting like a discussion in the bartending and craft beer community about the relationship between corporations and small businesses or smaller businesses. Sapporo USA bought the company in 2017 for $85 million and implemented a series of changes during its ownership, including brewing trendy flavors, a branding overhaul, launching a public tap room, which is the one I was talking about earlier, and selling beer in a can for the first time. You know, these are, I mean, with the exception of the tap room, everything else a lot of people thought was very, very strange. Especially considering the, craft beer movement. It didn't seem like, usually craft beers don't chase trends. And the canning process that's not the issue. It's just that you have this company that's been here for so long. To switch to a can, it seems like a very odd choice. Just 2 years later, workers voted to unionize, joining the International Longshore and Warehouse Union. At the time, workers were asked for better pay and better hours. A current worker who spoke to VinePair told the outlet they had not heard about the shutdown until that conversation. So there's also rumors that this might be some kind of anti-union thing. Once again, this is only a week in, or less than a week in, we don't know. Whenever this gets edited and published, there might be new revelations. That all said, the brewery could be purchased at the final hour. So it's been saved before, exchanged hands in the past. I mean, $85 million. I don't know what they're gonna sell it for, if they are. There's still discussions if maybe they can, this might be salvageable. Like, we still have, a few more weeks. I think they said it's gonna shut doors. I mean, they shut production, but the company might shut down around August. That's what I've read other news outlets say. The company is selling its assets through a process called assignment for the benefit of creditors, which is used to make the money back for investors quickly in comparison to bankruptcy. Okay, so you might think that's bad news, but if you read the next line, it was through the same process longtime owner Fritz Maytag bought the brewery in 1965. So if history repeats itself, maybe this could be saved. So maybe they'll just end up buying new equipment, which might make the production more efficient while keeping a lot of the tradition. Okay, so that's the article and about the news itself. Now we're going to actually talk about Sapporo's involvement and they might be even possibly responsible for this because Anchor Beer was doing fine. So let's take a look at this other article. Okay, how Sapporo USA sank Anchor Brewing Company. This Wednesday morning in San Francisco, Anchor Brewing Company's familiar navy blue flag could be spotted flapping in a breeze atop the house that Steam Beer built just as usual. But upon closer inspection, something was amiss. The banner was flying upside down, an orientation that the U.S. flag code reserves exclusively for instances of dire distress. And you probably seen like a upside down flag usually when some tragic event happens. The company announced as much in a press release issued around 2 a.m. local time Wednesday morning. Oh man, I remember this. My social media was blowing up when I saw this. I was like, I couldn't believe it. Citing rising costs, pandemic challenges, and sliding sales. Unfortunately, today's economic pressures have made the business no longer sustainable, and we had to make the heartbreaking decision to cease operations. Sam Singer, a local crisis PR heavyweight who suddenly began answering my press inquiries to Anchor about a month ago, states in its release. Okay, so we'll mention a little bit about my opinion first. The first thing is the pandemic challenges. So pandemic challenges. There was the Spanish flu 100 years ago, so it has already survived a pandemic. So I'm not really buying this. Unmentioned among the press release's list of factors precipitating Anchor's demise was Sapporo USA. Oh, yeah, this is like a red flag. They blamed everything except for probably one of the biggest events that has happened recently. Is it really the pandemic? It could be the questionable label changes, the decision to switch to cans, and chasing after trends. Those are all decisions made by Sapporo. And of course, the final decision to close down was also made by Sapporo USA, the stateside subsidiary of the Japanese conglomerate that acquired Anchor in 2017 isn't named once in Singer's overnight dispatch, but workers say it should be. After all, as far as they are concerned, the parent company ran America's first craft brewery into the ground. By the time news broke in early June 2023 that Anchor planned to kill off its Christmas seasonal, brewed annually since 1975, and discontinue national distribution of its portfolio, the flagship of which, Anchor Steam, serves as the foundational entry of the beer style now known as California Common Ale, workers told Hoptake that Sapporo USA had already undermined, overplayed, and generally cocked up its brief time at the helm of the historic firm. Yeah, the Christmas beer. It's a seasonal beer. It's kind of strange to announce that 6 months ahead. And this beer it's very popular. And the fact that it's been even more popular lately and they cut it out, like, you think that something that sells really well, like, why would you announce that you're not going to have it this year? That's almost like foreshadowing that something is wrong. DS thinks the Japanese macro brewers' the biggest mistake was purchasing the company in the first place. Yeah, this is the problem, is that why would a big corporation buy a craft brewery? What are you going to do with it? Craft beer in general isn't going to make as much money as an adjunct lager. The yield is low. Ingredients costs are very high. In a business standpoint, it makes very little sense. Like, what were they going to do with it? Turn it into another Sapporo? Sapporo tried to upgrade the facilities to brew Sapporo. I mean, that's just a strange choice. Why buy a craft brewery to do this? Why not just create a new brewery if you want to just make another factory for Sapporo? Even though Anchor, while with its roster of ales specializes in open fermentation, we can't brew Sapporo. We just don't have the capacity to do it. I don't know how they didn't effing realize that. Yeah, I've been to the brewery many, many times. It's really small. You could see the whole fermentation area just by standing there. Like, you can see the whole thing. It's not that big. It's a craft brewery. It doesn't have the capacity to make beer in that volume, and it's not supposed to. Like, did they not send anyone to just take a look at it? You could walk around the whole brewery in less than 5 minutes. It's not that big. Like, did they not send anyone to take a look at this place before purchasing it and making these decisions to make it to another Sapporo factory? Production schedule is a joke, one worker tells me. It changes week of, on, and constant basis. It used to be because of our workforce, which was the excuse. Now it's just something else. Tomorrow will be something else. It's almost as if bosses can't figure out how to manage our inventory or what we can produce. It's like, are these... I can only imagine these brewers are just some financial dudes in suits who don't have any understanding on how to make beer. You can't just take a company that's designed specifically for like 5 different IPAs, that's their flagship, and somehow use that same equipment without even considering the types of yeast, the hops, the malts, the water, the temperature of the fermentation conditions. You can't just change the style that drastically without buying new equipment. It's like buying a pizzeria and then trying to make desserts out of it. Sapporo USA also invested in costly automated equipment in hopes of modernizing the urban manufacturing landmark. Something workers agreed was desperately needed. It didn't go well, and at first Anchor's workers were excited by the prospect of labor-saving devices, viewing them as an opportunity to develop new skills and upgrade the aging brew house, which produced 65,000 barrels of beer in 2022, but commissioning process dragged out over half a year, with new bottling line like ripping bolts out of the concrete because it wasn't installed correctly, he says. Then you'd have to wait for however long for it to be fixed again. We went from 500 barrels a day to just around 200 by the time he left. So just blunders just halved the production process, even though this is supposed to increase it. It's like they didn't even measure anything when they bought the new equipment. F these robots. When Diaz came on as cellarman in 2021, Anchor was just 2 months removed from what may have been Sapporo's biggest single mistake while running Anchor, the rebrand. Oh my god, this has such a huge backlash. And if you are not familiar with the rebrand, we'll take a look at that later. This is one of those things that, why mess with tradition? Why spend money in doing something that not only does nothing, but actually makes things worse? In January of that year, the brewery rolled out a new look for Anchor's packaging and logo, apparently designed to bolster the brand's since discarded national sales strategy. It was a technicolor disaster. Potential customers threw a fit on social media. One current Anchor worker speaking on the background for fear of retaliation tells me that Anchor's famed brewery tour guides fielded hundreds of questions from attendees begging to know if and when the old logo would be reinstated. That was a major flop, and we all knew it. We all know it. Another current Anchor worker told me last month, just another mistake. Corporation thinking they can wipe away history. So let's take a look at okay, we're going to sidetrack to this article about the rebranding. San Francisco Anchor Brewing unveils new branding redesign for 125th anniversary. Now tell me, what does this look like? I'll put it on the screen somewhere. And tell me if you can tell the difference. Who thought of this? In what way does this celebrate the anniversary of, like, by taking away depth and color, contrast, and you're gonna make yourself look like Twisted Tea? Expect opportunist breweries trying to buy Anchor's recipes and intellectual property to brew its own beers elsewhere more cheaply, without union labor and opportunistic political hacks, to hold the brewery's demise as more evidence of San Francisco's woke-induced decay. Of course, San Francisco has a lot of problems right now, but this has nothing to do with that. This is a corporation that got greedy, and they thought that they could turn this craft brewery into something else that it wasn't supposed to be in the first place. It was never capable of making more Sapporo. It makes you think, like, how did they spend so much money on this without even taking a look at the place? Like, could they have not just asked one person, like someone who, like a home brewer, can this place make Sapporo? The answer is no. Hope for a white knight buyer to swoop in with enough cash to rescue San Francisco's team beer brewery once again, and enough wisdom not to try to bulldoze the idiosyncrasies and people that made it great. I mean, everybody went through 2 pandemics. It's totally, I'm not going to say it. This is an opinion, it's not a fact, but in my opinion, it has largely to do with Sapporo's handling, okay? The changing of the label, the decision to turn it, bottling or canning it, that has nothing to do with the pandemic or unions. So anyways, that was the article. Do you guys drink Anchor Steam? Do you drink Sapporo? Do you drink craft beer? Do you make your own beer at home? What do you guys think about this? Please let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you guys on the next one.